A mere 48 hours after the ceremony, my new son-in-law appeared at my home, a notary in tow. "This house has been sold," he declared. "You'll be relocating to an assisted living facility." The self-satisfied grin on his face suggested he expected an easy win against an old man. But my response was measured. "Excellent. Let's make a stop at the police precinct on the way. They're quite curious about the file I sent over concerning you." That single sentence altered the entire situation. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. "Arthur, Claire, and I need our own space to really begin our life together," Victor said, leaning in as his wine glass reflected the restaurant's soft lighting. "Your home would be ideal for a new couple." His words struck me like a bucket of cold water. I placed my fork down, the lingering sweetness of the wedding cake on my palate suddenly turning sour. We had just celebrated their union 2 days prior, and now this. "Victor, that is my home." My voice remained steady, though my hands gripped the table's edge. "I designed and built it myself 25 years ago." Claire fidgeted between us, her new wedding band glinting in the candlelight. The cozy booth at the Chestnut Grill suddenly felt claustrophobic. Patrons at other tables laughed, unaware of the grenade that had just detonated at ours. "But it's just you in such a big place." Victor's smile was unwavering. "It's not practical. And at your age, wouldn't you want something easier to maintain?" At my age. 69 was hardly decrepit, but Victor spoke as if I were already on my last legs. The champagne glass trembled in my hand. "We would take wonderful care of it," he pressed on, reaching out to touch Claire's hand. "Just imagine it, your future grandchildren playing in those very rooms." Claire's gaze shifted nervously between us. "Dad, Victor, please, let's not argue. This is meant to be a happy occasion." Happy? I had just written an $18,000 check for their wedding. The floral centerpieces from the event were already wilting on our table, their petals browning. "Victor," I sat up straighter, "at my age I am more than capable of making decisions about my own property. You are welcome to stay for a few days while you look for your own place." His confident demeanor wavered. For a split second, a chilling coldness crossed his eyes before the charming facade was back in place. "Of course, Arthur, I completely understand." But his tone had a new, sharp edge. "It's just that rents are so high now, and with Claire's salary—" "We'll be fine, honey." Claire squeezed his hand, but I detected the anxiety in her voice. She had always struggled financially. Victor's jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. "I was hoping we could handle this like family." What's the sense in holding on to a valuable asset when it could help all of us? A valuable asset? Not my home. Not the place I had carried my wife across the threshold. Where Claire learned to walk, where Eleanor passed her final days. An asset. The smooth jazz playing in the background now seemed to mock me. Other couples were lost in intimate conversations while mine was disintegrating. A server moved by, topping off water glasses with a practiced ease. "The answer is no." Each word was firmer than the last. "Find your own place." Victor leaned back, his smile becoming brittle. "Well, we can always revisit this when emotions are more settled." Emotions? As if my desire to keep my own home was some irrational outburst. Claire's expression fell. "Maybe we should just go home." Home. She meant my house, where they had been staying since they returned, where Victor had already been inquiring about the property taxes, the heating system, and local market values. I shoved my chair back, my napkin dropping to the floor. The other diners became a blur as blood pounded in my ears. "Arthur, wait." Claire started to rise, but I was already on my feet, pulling my wallet from my coat. 2 $50 bills landed on the table with more force than needed. "Cover the check," I said curtly. "I need some air." Victor's voice trailed me as I walked away. "We'll discuss this later, Arthur, once you've had a chance to think it through." The warmth of the restaurant faded as I headed for the exit, every step taking me further from my daughter's worried eyes and my son-in-law's scheming smile. The host gave a polite nod, oblivious to the fact that my world had just fractured. Outside, the March chill bit at my skin. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking from more than just the cold. The drive home was silent, Claire's anxious glances in the rearview mirror weighing on my conscience. By the time I parked in my driveway, my tie felt like it was choking me. Inside, I loosened the silk knot and poured a generous measure of bourbon. The familiar shadows of my study offered a small comfort. The leather chair molded to my form, bookshelves filled with 4 decades of collected knowledge, photos of Eleanor smiling from the corner of the desk. I collapsed into the chair with a heavy sigh. Outside, street lights cast geometric shadows on my lawn. My lawn, my house. The sheer audacity of his demand was still breathtaking. $18,000. I wrote that check without a second thought, seeing Claire's face light up as she described her dream wedding. The reception at the Chestnut Grill, the string quartet, the opulent flowers that cost a fortune, all to give my daughter her perfect day. And now, her husband wanted my house as well. I took out my phone and scrolled through the wedding pictures from just 2 days ago. Victor cutting the cake, his hand covering Claire's on the knife. Victor dancing with my daughter, spinning her into laughter. Victor shaking my hand, calling me Dad for the first time. Was this his plan all along? The bourbon burned, but not as intensely as the memory of Victor's expression when I refused him. As if he expected it, as if this was just one move in a larger strategy. My hand found the desk drawer and pulled out the leather-bound journal Eleanor had given me when I retired from architecture. "For all those plans still in your head," she had said. March 2025, I wrote. Victor Stone demanded ownership of the house at post-wedding dinner, cited practicality and my age. Claire was distressed, but deferred to her husband. The pen felt heavy. What kind of person does this 2 days after a wedding I financed? He wants my home, not to buy it, not to split the proceeds from a sale. He wants it handed to him, as if I'm some senile old fool ready for the scrap heap. I put the pen down and walked to the window. The street was quiet. Porch lights glowed warmly. Normal people living normal lives, not dealing with sons-in-law who talked about valuable assets over cake. Back at my desk, I opened my laptop. Bank statements, property records, insurance policies, the numbers that defined a lifetime of careful planning. The house was valued at $450,000, probably more now. My pension and savings were secure for another 20 years, maybe longer. Victor somehow knew all of this. His questions during their engagement had seemed innocent then, just a future son-in-law taking an interest. Now they felt like intelligence gathering. What's the property tax situation here, Arthur? This area must have seen great appreciation. Have you thought about what you'll do with all this room eventually? I had answered him openly, proud of my financial stability, proud to show Claire's fiancé that she was marrying into a secure family. Eleanor's picture caught the light, her eyes seemingly watching me. What would she have made of this? She was always better at reading people, at sensing ulterior motives. "Trust but verify," she always said. "People will show you their true colors if you just pay attention." I had been too happy about Claire's engagement to pay attention, too relieved she had found someone after her divorce 3 years ago. The journal was open, waiting. I picked up the pen. Victor Stone, 39, business consultant, says he helps small businesses with efficiency, works from home, travels for clients. Never mentioned specific client names or demonstrated deep business knowledge. The more I wrote, the more questions I had. What did Victor actually do? I'd never seen him in an office, never heard him on a business call. His income seemed sufficient, but not extravagant, yet he'd given Claire a 2-carat ring that must have cost $22,000. I closed the journal and picked up my phone. Tomorrow, I would start asking questions, starting with David Vance. My lawyer had handled Eleanor's estate, knew my finances, and was the soul of discretion. Something was very wrong with Victor Stone, very wrong. The grocery bags felt unusually heavy as I pulled into my driveway on Thursday. 2 nights of fitful sleep since the restaurant incident had left me exhausted. Every shadow felt like a new threat. Sam Peterson was tending his flower bed and straightened up as I got out of my car, his weathered face etched with concern. "Arthur," he strode quickly across his lawn to mine, "I need to talk to you about something." I placed the groceries on the hood of my car. Sam's background as a police officer was evident in his serious tone. "What's wrong?" "Yesterday, Victor brought someone to your house." Sam glanced at my front door, then back at me. "A man in a suit, carrying a briefcase and some kind of laser measuring tool." A chill ran down my spine. What were they doing? Walking the property, measuring, taking pictures. The man in the suit was writing everything in a notebook. Sam's eyes narrowed. Looked like a professional appraisal to me. They were very thorough. The groceries were forgotten. How long were they here? At least an hour. Victor had a key. He let the man inside, too. Sam's expression made it clear he knew what this implied. The guy spent a lot of time in your backyard, measuring the fence line and taking photos of the foundation. My hands balled into fists. I assumed you knew, otherwise I would have called you right away. Thank you, Sam. This is extremely important. I grabbed the bags with trembling hands. Extremely important indeed. Inside, I dropped the bags on the counter and went directly to my study. The computer booted up agonizingly slowly as my mind raced. Browser history. If Victor used my computer, he would have left a trail. The search history appeared, and my deepest fears were confirmed. On Wednesday afternoon, while I was at the hardware store, someone had been busy. Property appraisers, Seattle suburbs, real estate valuation services, fast house sale companies, cash for residential properties. Each search felt like a punch to the gut. I scrolled further. Legal requirements, property transfer, Washington, power of attorney real estate, elderly homeowner transition programs. My hands shook as I clicked on the visited links. Professional appraisal firms, companies offering quick cash for homes, law offices specializing in property transfers for seniors. Victor hadn't just brought an appraiser, he had researched the entire process of taking my house. The chair groaned as I leaned back, trying to absorb the scale of his deceit. This wasn't a spontaneous idea over dinner. This was a premeditated plan. I thought back to his careful questions about my finances, his interest in my daily schedule. Had he been sizing me up all along? My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Dad, are you feeling better? Victor said you were upset at dinner. Maybe we can all talk tonight." Talk. Victor wanted to talk, probably to present his reasonable proposal, now backed by appraisals and legal research. I stared at the screen, the evidence of his plot laid bare. With trembling fingers, I dialed David Vance's number. This was more than just greed. This was systematic fraud, and I needed legal help immediately. "David Vance's office, this is Brenda." My hand tightened on the phone. "Brenda, it's Arthur Mills. I must speak with David right away. It's an emergency." "He's with a client, Mr. Mills. Can he call you back?" "Tell him it's about real estate fraud." The words felt strange on my tongue. "Tell him my son-in-law, Victor Stone, is trying to steal my house." There was a brief pause. "I'll get him for you, sir." The wait felt endless. I paced the study, the browser history glowing on the monitor like a confession. "Arthur." David's voice was filled with concern. "Brenda mentioned something about fraud and your son-in-law." "Victor Stone," I forced the name out. "He's planning to take my home, David. I have proof he's been researching how to do it." The silence on the other end was unnerving. "Victor Stone, you said?" "Yes, he married my daughter 2 days ago, and now—" "Arthur, I need you to sit down." David's professional tone had shifted to one of grave urgency. "Let me check something in my system." I heard the click of a keyboard and the rustle of papers, the sounds of David's methodical work, but his tone was anything but routine. "Arthur, I have 3 active files involving a Victor Stone." Each word was like a drop of ice water. "He specializes in real estate fraud that targets elderly homeowners." The room seemed to spin. "Are you telling me he's done this before?" "His method is consistent. He marries into a family, gains their trust, and then uses forged documents to seize their property." David's voice was now all business, as if reading from a case summary. "The victims are always men in their late 60s or 70s, recently widowed, with adult children who are in a precarious financial situation." My free hand grasped the desk for support. "But he just married my daughter." "That's his timeline, Arthur. He moves quickly before anyone can react or get legal advice." Papers shuffled on his end. "How much did you know about his background?" "Nothing solid. He said he was a business consultant, worked from home." The admission felt foolish. We were just so happy Claire found someone after her divorce. "Arthur, you are in immediate danger." David's tone cut through my shock. "Sign nothing. Do not give him access to any of your financial documents. Do not let him handle any of your legal affairs." "What do I do about Claire? She has no idea what kind of man she married." "First, we gather evidence. Then we protect your assets." David's voice was firm. "Your daughter's heart will heal, but if your life savings are stolen, they're gone for good." I stared at the computer screen, at the proof of Victor's research. "He brought an appraiser to my house yesterday. He used my computer to look up the legal process. That's his standard procedure: professional appraisal, forged transfer documents, a corrupt notary to validate them." David spoke as if reciting a well-known formula. "Tell me everything you've observed." I recounted it all: the dinner demand, the appraiser, the browser history, Victor's probing questions during their engagement. "A classic pattern," David confirmed. "Arthur, I'm clearing my calendar. Can you be in my office first thing tomorrow? Bring every document you have related to your property: the deed, will, insurance, bank statements." "Should I call the police?" "Not yet. We need an airtight case first." David's experience was evident. Victor is slick. He's beaten fraud charges before by claiming his victims willingly transferred the property and later suffered from memory loss. Memory loss. The accusation stung, but I understood the tactic. "One more thing, Arthur." David's voice was a clear warning. "Be extremely careful around him. If he finds out you're onto him, he might accelerate his plan." I hung up and looked at my reflection in the dark window. My son-in-law wasn't just greedy, he was a professional predator, and I was his next target. But I hadn't survived 40 years in architecture by backing down from a challenge. Tomorrow, David and I would start building the case that would end Victor Stone's criminal enterprise. As I reached for my safe's combination, I heard Victor's laughter from the kitchen, and for the first time since that dinner, I smiled. Let him laugh while he could. The drive back from David's office was long, his words echoing in my head. Professional criminal, systematic fraud, multiple victims. My son-in-law had transformed from an irritating opportunist into a far greater menace. Victor's car was in the driveway when I arrived. Through the kitchen window, I saw him and Claire at the table, their conversation looking easy and natural. The scene of domestic bliss now felt like a grotesque charade. I walked in, calling out a casual hello. Victor's voice, warm and friendly, drifted from the kitchen, asking about my day. The same voice that had demanded my home just days before. I locked the door to my study and went directly to the wall safe, concealed behind a portrait of Eleanor. The combination, 62489, our anniversary, had protected our most important papers for decades. Inside was the foundation of my life's work: the property deed from 1988, an updated will from 2023, insurance policies, investment portfolios, the very documents Victor needed for his scheme. I laid them out on my desk, examining each one with an architect's eye for detail. The house deed, stamped and notarized, worth $450,000. My will, leaving everything to Claire, updated after Eleanor's passing. Bank statements detailing the retirement funds I'd spent a lifetime building. Victor didn't have access to any of this yet, but David's warning was clear. He moves fast. From the kitchen, I heard the clatter of dishes being washed, the sounds of a normal couple masking Victor's predatory intentions. How many other families had he deceived like this? How many other fathers had sat in their studies, realizing too late they had welcomed a wolf into their home? I took out my journal and began documenting every detail with methodical precision. Each suspicious conversation, every question about my finances that had seemed caring at the time, but was clearly reconnaissance. Arthur, you must get lonely in this big house. Have you thought about what you'll do with all this space? Claire worries about you living here alone. Every remark now revealed its true intent, an evaluation of my vulnerability, an assessment of my attachment to my home, a manipulation of my daughter's love for me. The safe also held Eleanor's jewelry, including her 2-carat engagement ring, remarkably similar to the one Victor had given Claire. How had a struggling consultant afforded a $22,000 ring? I photographed every document, creating multiple digital backups. If Victor got his hands on the originals, I would still have proof of ownership. The architect in me valued redundancy. My phone rang. It was Claire. "Dad, are you all right? You've been so withdrawn since the wedding dinner." Her voice was filled with genuine concern, the same concern Victor was undoubtedly exploiting. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just tired." Victor thinks we should all sit down and talk, clear the air. Clear the air or present his forged documents and fake appraisals. "Maybe tomorrow," I said. "I need to get some rest." After the call, I continued my preparations. I changed all my online banking passwords, contacted my insurance company to add fraud alerts, and scheduled a meeting with my investment advisor. 3 other families destroyed, David had said. 3 other fathers who trusted their daughter's judgment and paid the price. But I was not them. 40 years of solving complex problems had taught me to analyze threats, anticipate failure, and build safeguards. I locked the documents back in the safe and checked the time. 9:30 p.m. Victor and Claire were likely settling in, planning their future in my house, with my money. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. But tonight, I had one more call to make. The bank's fraud prevention hotline answered quickly. "Allied Trust Security Division, this is Jennifer." "This is Arthur Mills, account number 773184. I need to report suspicious activity involving my son-in-law." As I detailed the situation to Jennifer, I heard Victor's laughter from upstairs. My own smile returned. Let him enjoy his last night of feeling in control. Tomorrow his world would begin to unravel, just as he had planned for mine. 3 days of methodical research lay before me as I sat at my computer with my morning coffee. David had provided the names of previous victims, and I had 48 hours before our meeting with the police. Victor was still asleep with Claire, giving me precious, uninterrupted time to work. The first victim was in Portland. Isabella Rossi, 73, whose daughter had married Victor in October. By Christmas, forged papers claimed she had sold her home to a cash buyer for a fraction of its value. I found her on Facebook. Recent posts showed a cramped apartment and complaints about rent, a stark contrast to her older photos of a spacious house and garden. The story matched David's files. Victor's own social media told a different story. A professional headshot, photos from business conferences, glowing client testimonials. But a cross-reference of dates showed inconsistencies. Victor claiming to be at a conference in Salt Lake City while he was supposedly on his honeymoon in Portland with Isabella's daughter. I took screenshots, documenting every contradiction. His LinkedIn profile listed 3 different business addresses in 18 months. His Facebook relationship history showed 4 marriages in 2 years, each following the same pattern. rapid courtship, lavish wedding, and immediate concerns about housing. Day 2 was spent on phone calls David had arranged. Isabella Rossi's voice trembled as she recounted her story. "He was so helpful at first," she said, "always worried about my safety, offering to manage my finances to reduce my stress." Her voice was heavy with betrayal. Then one morning, he showed up with a moving truck and an eviction notice. He said the house was sold for my own good. William Park in Salt Lake City told a similar tale. 6 weeks after their wedding, he produced papers saying I'd signed over power of attorney. The signature looked like mine, but I have no memory of signing anything. Each conversation exposed Victor's sophisticated operation, professional forgers, corrupt notaries, and a legal cunning that made his victims question their own sanity. The emotional toll was always the same. Adult children who believed their new spouse over their parent. Families torn apart by his manipulations. By day 3, I had assembled a detailed timeline. Victor's method was identical every time. Identify a target, quickly court a financially vulnerable adult child, marry within 6 months, express immediate housing needs, and then produce forged documents to seize the property. The most damning piece of evidence came from a deleted social media post I recovered from a cached version of the page, posted 2 days after our wedding. Victor had written, "Another successful acquisition. This old man won't know what hit him. #, early retirement. #, property investment." The post was deleted within hours, but not before I had a screenshot. His arrogance had provided the perfect proof of premeditation. I organized everything into folders. Digital evidence of timeline inconsistencies and multiple identities, victim testimonials, documentation of forged signatures, and financial records tracking the fraud. David called Wednesday night. "This is exceptional, Arthur," he said after reviewing my findings. "Most victims don't piece this together until it's too late." What's our next step? Tomorrow we meet with Detective Karen Reynolds. She's been tracking Victor for 2 years but has never had enough to press charges. David's satisfaction was palpable. "Your research may finally be what we need." That night I reviewed every document, every screenshot. 3 days of intense work had transformed me from a bewildered homeowner into a competent investigator. The evidence was methodical, overwhelming, and would undoubtedly end Victor's criminal career. As I was about to shut down my laptop, a final detail caught my eye. Victor's latest Facebook post, uploaded just an hour ago, exciting changes on the horizon. Sometimes family means making tough choices for everyone's future. The timing was chilling. He was about to make his move, likely tomorrow, when he believed I was at my most vulnerable. I saved the screenshot and smiled grimly. Let him try. I was more than ready. After 3 grueling days hunched over my computer, I decided the house needed a thorough cleaning. There was a certain irony in tidying up my home while simultaneously planning to defend it from the man sleeping upstairs. As I shifted the coffee table to vacuum, a glint of light caught my eye. A tiny lens, no bigger than a button, was nestled behind a ceramic bowl Eleanor had brought back from a trip. My architect's mind instantly recognized it. This was no stray piece of hardware. Someone had planted a camera in my living room. My hands trembled as I inspected the device. It was professional grade, motion activated, with a micro SD card slot. The installation was clever, nearly invisible. Victor had been spying on me. The violation felt more profound than his demand for my house. This was my sanctuary, where I had grieved, made private calls, and planned my counterattack. All of it captured on video. I resisted the urge to destroy it. Evidence? This was evidence. Using a small screwdriver, I carefully extracted the micro SD card. My computer seemed to take an eternity to read the tiny device. 47 video files appeared, spanning the past 2 weeks. The first was dated from Victor's 3rd day here. With a sense of dread, I clicked on it. My own face appeared, talking on the phone to my insurance agent. The audio was perfectly clear. File after file showed my daily routine: morning coffee, evening news, phone calls with David about estate planning. Victor had been studying my life, looking for weaknesses. Then I found the recording he never intended for me to see. File 38 showed Victor himself, standing in my living room while I was out. He was on his phone, speaking with casual confidence. "The old man is completely trusting," Victor's voice filled my speakers. "By the end of the month, the house will be ours. The documents are nearly ready." I paused the video, my heart pounding. It was a confession, in his own words. The conversation continued. "Gregory, are you sure the notary stamps are clean?" Gregory, a name I didn't know, but clearly an accomplice. "These old guys can be unpredictable," a voice replied from Victor's phone. "He's just like the others," Victor scoffed. "Proud, independent, and ultimately naive. He actually paid $18,000 for our wedding, made it so easy to look legitimate." My vision blurred with rage. The recording went on. "And the daughter? Claire will never believe her dear old dad over her loving husband. She's the perfect cover, perfect cover. My daughter wasn't his wife. She was his alibi." I immediately copied the file to multiple backup drives. This single recording was the smoking gun. Victor's own words, stating his criminal intent, naming his accomplice, and revealing his entire plan. Gregory Finch, I learned from other recordings, was the corrupt notary who had validated documents for Victor's past victims. Their phone calls laid out the whole operation: target selection, document forgery, family manipulation, and property transfer. But Victor's arrogance had been his undoing. He discussed his crimes in detail, never imagining his own surveillance would be used against him. I stared at my reflection in the monitor. The hidden camera was meant to give him an edge, but instead his overconfidence had handed me irrefutable proof. I closed the laptop. It was time to stop investigating and start acting. Detective Karen Reynolds was David's recommendation. As I dialed the police department, I finally felt the tide turning. Victor's own arrogance would be his downfall. The downtown police station was more imposing than I had imagined. I walked through the doors carrying a briefcase containing 3 weeks of evidence against my son-in-law. The hidden camera recordings were the final piece of the puzzle. Detective Karen Reynolds had agreed to see me immediately when I mentioned Victor Stone's name. "Mr. Mills," a woman in her 40s with a prominent badge approached me. "I'm Detective Reynolds. Thank you for coming." Her handshake was firm, her eyes sharp as she led me to an interview room. "I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting much when you called," she said, motioning for me to sit. "Most elderly fraud victims have very little hard evidence." I placed my briefcase on the metal table. "Detective, I spent 40 years as an architect. I believe in thorough documentation." She opened my case file and began to review the folders, her eyebrows rising with each page turn: social media screenshots, victim testimonies, financial records, and finally the recordings from Victor's own hidden camera. After 20 minutes of careful review, she looked up. "In 15 years on the force, this is the most comprehensive case file I have ever seen." Detective Reynolds turned to her computer. "We've been tracking Victor Stone across 3 states for 8 months. He's wanted in connection with at least 12 fraud cases." 12? The number was staggering. "How is that possible?" "He's very good at what he does," she said, with professional frustration. "Victims are often too embarrassed to report, and the evidence is rarely enough to prosecute." She pulled up Victor's file, showing me a map with red pins marking locations across Washington, Oregon, and Utah. Each pin was a ruined family. "Well, I'm not embarrassed," I said, "and I have more than enough evidence." The detective leaned forward, her demeanor shifting from routine to strategic. "Mr. Mills, you could be the key to finally stopping him, but it would require your cooperation in a sting operation." My pulse quickened. "What kind of cooperation?" "We need you to act normally. Let Victor proceed with his plan while we record everything." She studied my face. It means letting him think he's winning until we have him on tape committing the crime. The idea of playing along felt surreal. You want me to let him think he's succeeding? Until we have undeniable proof of criminal intent. Your recordings are fantastic, but we need him attempting the actual fraud in real time. Her experience was clear in her methodical plan. It's the only way to guarantee a conviction. What about my safety? We'll have officers surrounding your house. Response time will be under 30 seconds. She produced a small device, like a key fob. A panic button. One press, and backup arrives immediately. I held the device in my hand. After 3 weeks of gathering evidence, the thought of a direct confrontation was both terrifying and necessary. When would this happen? Based on your recordings, Victor mentioned the end of the month. That gives us 1 week to prepare. Detective Reynolds began to organize my evidence into official police files. We'll need to install our own recording equipment, coordinate with the DA, and brief a tactical team. And Claire? My daughter doesn't know the man she married. The detective's expression softened. Family is always the hardest part of these cases, but protecting your daughter means stopping Victor before he can destroy any more lives. I thought of Isabella Rossi, who had lost her home, and William Park, who had suffered a heart attack from the stress. 12 families torn apart by one man's greed. Detective, what do you need from me? Everything you've given us is a perfect start. She stood, extending her hand again. Tomorrow morning, my technical team will be at your house to install surveillance. By tomorrow evening, we'll be ready for Victor's next move. As she walked me out, I felt the weight of the plan. I had 24 hours to prepare for the most important performance of my life. Mr. Mills, Detective Reynolds said at the door, in all my years of police work, I've never seen a victim turn the tables so completely. Victor Stone has no idea what's about to hit him. I drove home knowing my quiet retirement had just become the final act in a criminal's downfall. The house felt different as I walked in, knowing that in 24 hours it would be a crime scene. Detective Reynolds' team was due at 8 a.m. to install their equipment. I had 1 night to prepare. Lillian and Victor were out, giving me time alone. I sat in my study, surrounded by the evidence, trying to script tomorrow's conversation. Victor would present his forged documents with confidence. I would have to act shocked, confused, and eventually defeated. The performance had to be convincing. Morning arrived too quickly. At 8 a.m. sharp, 3 unmarked vans parked outside. Mr. Mills, we'll have everything installed in 4 hours, Detective Reynolds announced. After that, we rehearse. I watched as her team worked with precision. Micro cameras appeared in my living room and kitchen, each one invisible once placed. Directional microphones followed. These record in ultra-high definition, the lead technician explained. The audio system filters out background noise. He won't notice a thing. Detective Reynolds handed me an earpiece. Direct communication with our command unit. We can guide you if needed. Where will you be? A mobile command unit across the street. Officers in neighboring houses. A backup team 2 blocks away. She showed me a tablet with multiple camera angles of my own living room. Response time will be under 30 seconds if you hit the panic button. By noon, my familiar home had become a sophisticated recording studio. Now we rehearse, Detective Reynolds said. For 2 hours, we practiced. A detective played Victor while I rehearsed my responses. Your safety is our top priority, she stressed. Don't try to trap him. Just be yourself. Ask questions any reasonable person would ask. So, Arthur, we need to discuss the house transfer, the detective said, role-playing. I'm not interested in transferring anything, I replied. Perfect. Keep your responses natural. The more he has to explain, the more evidence we get. At 3 p.m., she tested the systems. The earpiece crackled. Testing, Mr. Mills. Can you hear me? Crystal clear? Excellent. Officers are moving into position. I saw neighbors welcoming relatives into their homes. Sam Peterson gave me a subtle nod from his yard. His house now contained 2 armed officers. Technical check complete, Detective Reynolds reported. At 5 p.m., Victor's car pulled into the driveway. "Showtime, Mr. Mills," her voice whispered in my ear. "Remember, we're right here." I touched the panic button in my pocket and watched through the window as Victor approached, carrying an envelope that surely held the forged documents. He knocked with cheerful confidence, oblivious that his next conversation would be his last as a free man. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m., and a tiny vibration in my pocket signaled that all recording equipment was active. Through the window, I saw Victor on my front steps with another man in a suit, both wearing predatory smiles. This was the moment 3 weeks of work had led to. I opened the door. "Victor, and you've brought a friend." "Arthur." Victor's enthusiasm was chillingly genuine. "This is Gregory Finch, a licensed notary. We have wonderful news for you." Gregory Finch looked every bit the part of a corrupt official. His handshake felt clammy. "Mr. Mills, a pleasure," he said with false sincerity. "Victor has told me so much about your situation." They settled into my living room, spreading documents across the coffee table as if they owned it. The hidden cameras captured every move. "Arthur, I have incredible news," Victor announced. "We've just sold the house. You're moving to a lovely senior community. It's all taken care of." I examined the papers, noting the professional quality of the forgeries. "That's interesting, Victor. Who exactly bought my house?" "A wonderful young family," he said, his smile unwavering. "Gregory here has all the legal paperwork." Gregory opened his briefcase with a flourish. "Mr. Mills, these documents show the completed sale of your property, all legally binding and properly notarized." "I don't remember agreeing to sell my house, Mr. Finch." "Sometimes elderly individuals can be forgetful about these arrangements," Gregory replied with practiced condescension. "The paperwork clearly shows your signature." Perfect. They were walking right into the trap, establishing their entire fraudulent scheme on camera. "Well, this is certainly a surprise," I said, playing the part of the confused victim. "Perhaps we should drive down to the police station just to make sure this is all in order." Victor's confident expression faltered. "The police? Why would we need them?" "They're very interested in the file I sent them about your previous house sales." The temperature in the room plummeted. Victor's face went pale. "What? What previous sales?" His voice had lost its confident edge. "I'm talking about your activities in Portland, Salt Lake City, and 3 other towns, Victor. The police have been looking for you for some time." Victor shot to his feet, the forged documents scattering. "You're delusional." "Gregory, tell him these papers are legal." "Victor, what is he talking about?" Gregory's professional mask was crumbling. "You said this was a clean deal." "I'm talking about the fact that Detective Karen Reynolds has 47 recordings of you discussing your criminal plans, Victor," I said, remaining seated, "including your conversations with Gregory about forging notary seals." Gregory went white. "Victor, you never mentioned any police investigation." "Shut up, Gregory." Victor lunged for the documents, heading for the door. This old man is confused. But the sound of car doors slamming outside stopped him cold. Through the window, he could see unmarked police vehicles surrounding my house. He turned back to me, his predatory confidence replaced by raw fear. "What did you do?" I pressed the panic button in my pocket. "I protected my home from thieves, Victor. Something you should have thought about before targeting the wrong architect." The front door burst open. Detective Miller stood there with 3 uniformed officers, their badges glinting. "Victor Stone," she announced with professional satisfaction, "you're under arrest." "I'm afraid there's nowhere to run, Victor." The front door burst open before he could reach it, and Detective Reynolds entered with 3 uniformed officers, their badges gleaming in the light. Victor stood frozen, still clutching the forged papers that would seal his fate. "Victor Stone, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, elder abuse, conspiracy, and operating an interstate criminal enterprise," Detective Reynolds stated, her voice full of authority. "This is absurd." Victor's confidence shattered. "Arthur, tell them This is just a family misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding, Victor, was you thinking you could steal my house." I remained seated as justice unfolded. Gregory Finch had already surrendered, his briefcase open, revealing the tools of his trade. "Officers, I want to cooperate," he said, his voice trembling. "I didn't know about his other crimes." "Mr. Finch, you're also under arrest," Detective Reynolds replied. "Your cooperation will be noted." "Gregory, don't say a word," Victor shouted as officers cuffed him. But they could prove everything. The cameras had captured it all. As Victor was handcuffed, I felt the deep satisfaction of a complex project reaching its successful conclusion. "Sir, we need those documents," an officer said. In a last act of defiance, Victor tried to tear up the papers, but the officers stopped him, preserving the evidence. "These are private family matters," he protested. "They're evidence in multiple felony cases across 3 states," Detective Reynolds corrected him. Through the window, I saw neighbors on the sidewalk. Sam Peterson stood in his yard, arms crossed, nodding in approval. My quiet suburban street was now a crime scene. "Mr. Mills, for the record," Detective Reynolds said, "did these men try to fraudulently claim ownership of your house with forged documents?" "Yes, Detective, using fake signatures, a corrupt notary, and intimidation." "He's lying." Victor was desperate now. I was helping an elderly man who can't manage his own affairs. The irony was perfect. His final defense was the very condescension that had motivated me to fight back. "The judge will determine that," Detective Reynolds said, leading him away. Gregory's cooperation began instantly. "Officers, I have information about other operations, other targets Victor was researching." "Smart choice, Mr. Finch," Detective Reynolds said. "Full cooperation might reduce your sentence from 15 years to 5. As police cars departed, media vans arrived. Word had spread that a major fraud ring had been taken down by one of its intended victims. "Mr. Mills," a reporter called out, "how did you uncover this scheme?" 40 years as an architect taught me to analyze problems," I replied. "When something doesn't add up, you investigate until it does." Detective Reynolds returned as the crowd thinned. "Outstanding work, Mr. Mills. This arrest closes cases in 5 states. You've saved dozens of families." "What happens now?" "A trial in about 8 weeks. With your evidence, a conviction is virtually certain." She handed me her card. "The DA will be in touch, but this case is rock solid." I looked at my house, finally safe again. The surveillance gear would be gone tomorrow, but I would never be the same. "Detective," I said, "thank you for believing me." "Mr. Mills," she replied with respect, "you didn't just help yourself, you stopped a career criminal. That's something to be proud of." As the last police car drove away, I realized that while this battle was over, the war was not. Victor's trial would be the final chapter, but tonight, for the first time in weeks, I would sleep peacefully in my own home, protected by my own resolve. 8 weeks later, I walked up the steps of the King County Courthouse carrying the same briefcase that had started it all. The May morning was bright as I prepared for the final act. Detective Reynolds was waiting for me. "Ready for the final chapter, Mr. Mills?" "More than ready," I replied. Inside, the courtroom was buzzing. Victor sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his swagger gone. Gregory Finch had already pleaded guilty in exchange for his testimony. But the most important person there was Claire, sitting behind the prosecution. She had filed for divorce immediately, reclaiming her life. Our eyes met, and she smiled with a warmth I hadn't seen in months. Judge Marcus Thorne called the court to order. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are here to determine the guilt or innocence of Victor Stone." The prosecutor laid out Victor's criminal empire: 12 victims, 5 states, over $2 million in stolen property. "The evidence will show," he concluded, "that Victor Stone is a systematic predator who destroyed families for profit." Victor's attorney tried to mitigate the damage. "My client made poor choices, but he is not the mastermind the prosecution claims." I almost laughed. Even now, Victor couldn't accept responsibility. One by one, the victims testified. Isabella Rossi from Portland spoke through tears about losing her home. William Park from Salt Lake City described the stress-induced heart attack he suffered. Each story was a mirror image of the last. Then came the audio from Victor's hidden camera. The courtroom fell silent as his own voice filled the room. The old man is completely trusting. By the end of the month, the house will be ours. Victor's face crumpled. "Mr. Mills," the prosecutor called, "please take the stand." I walked to the witness box, feeling the weight of all the families he had harmed. "Mr. Mills, please describe the events of March 25th. "The defendant arrived at my house with forged documents claiming I had sold my property," I said clearly. "He demanded my immediate eviction." "How did you respond?" "I suggested we visit the police station, where I had already reported his extensive criminal activities." Victor's lawyer tried a weak cross-examination. "Mr. Mills, isn't it possible this was all a family misunderstanding?" "Counselor," I replied, "systematic criminals who defraud elderly victims across multiple states don't create misunderstandings. They create federal cases." The courtroom broke into quiet laughter. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Judge Thorne was swift. "Mr. Green, you have targeted the vulnerable for your own gain. This court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison, with full restitution to all victims." Victor's legs buckled as the bailiff approached. Richard Fox received 5 years with a chance of parole. Outside, Claire hugged me tightly. "Dad, I'm so proud of you." "Sweetheart, you loved a man who deceived professionals for years. That speaks to your good heart, not poor judgment." "How can you forgive me for letting him into our lives?" "Because you're my daughter, and you deserve someone who values the incredible person you are." Detective Reynolds joined us. "Mr. Mills, this case will be taught at the academy. You've shown that age brings wisdom, not weakness." As Claire and I drove home, she squeezed my hand. "Dad, what will you do now?" I thought about volunteering to help prevent elder fraud, about using my architect's mind to solve problems beyond my own. "Whatever it is," I said, "I know I can handle it." At 69, I had learned that protecting what you love requires not just affection, but strategy, preparation, and determination. Sometimes that is exactly what justice needs most. My home was safe, my daughter was healing, and Victor Stone would spend the next 12 years remembering the old man who refused to be his victim. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. To hear the next story, click the box on your left. Thanks for listening.